Hi everyone, it's January 15th, 2022. This is an aged bedding bin or a maturing bedding bin. I just actually used some of the contents of it to replenish a bin that I harvested. I think it was Cinderella, as well as another bin. It was, which one's up there now? It was Bitsy, but there's still aged bedding in here. This bedding has been in here so long, it's pretty much turning into a worm bin. There are worms in here because, of course, I always start the bins with castings that had cocoons in it. And I must have started this bin, now's January, so I bet I started it in September. And I've actually started feeding it because there are so many worms in here. I'll just go down this side here and try to find some of the worms that are in here. And you can see, there's actually lots of worms in here. I actually gave them a feeding on this cardboard the other day. So there are plenty of worms in here. And most of them are just from the cocoons that came along for the ride with the castings that I started the bedding mixture with. And of course, so they've been multiplying, and as you can see, the bedding is actually pretty far along. So when I add this to my bins, the bedding is already well on its way to being broken down by the worms. Worms go in as well as the bedding when I add from this bin. And so it's a good deal all around. So it's kind of turned into its own bedding bin or its own worm bin, but actually it is my bedding bin. One of two that I have. They're large, I believe, 69-liter totes, and it's deeper than a worm bin. It isn't a deeper looking right now because, like I said, I just replenished an entire worm cafe tray, well, about half of it. So there's an avocado that's finally ready to break open. So it's not as deep as it was because I've just replenished 2 bins out of it. And I do leave the lid off and let the worms die before I dig in here and get bedding to replenish other systems. And so the net is the worms tend to stay in here and keep working on the cardboard. Now, I was going to replenish cardboard in here because I just did, like I said, take a whole bunch of it out. And then my husband happened to, and you see they're breeding in here. So there's a baby worm right there. So they are definitely laying cocoons and breeding. This is why I've got so many worms in here. So my husband went down to the basement and emptied out our vacuum canister. And a couple of things. I've never given this bin a name because it was always just my bedding bin. And I've never seen anybody put vacuum canister contents, vacuum contents into a worm bin. Now we happen to have, we have a couple things. We have a dog. So we've given bins our dog hair before. I think that's the end of a leak. And we know that the worm bins do just fine. Cinderella gets the dog hair all the time, does just fine with it. And second thing, we have wool carpets. So anything that is vacuumed up in this house is usually grit from the dog's paws and off my scooter wheels. And the wool carpet fibers, and then all the dander and stuff that you shed off your hair, as gross as that sounds. So we've got a little container of it here, just a fast food container with this mixture. Obviously you can tell our carpets are an off-white color. So is our dog. So it's hard to tell how much of this is dog hair and how much of it is carpet fiber, quite frankly, because they're both the same color. That was intentional. We've always had golden retrievers, so our dogs are always the same color. Their hair is the same color as the carpet, kind of a palomino white. Anyway, so this has got lots of dust in it, so the minute I move it, it's going to do a big pig pen thing and shed a lot of dust. But I thought I would try this out as a bedding because we've got a lot of it. Our built-in vacuum had a lot of this in it. And I'm like, why would we just throw this in the garbage if we can compost it? And I actually compost these containers too. But I thought I would try this bedding just on its own. And I'm going to give this bin a name now because, you know, it's always just been my aged bedding bin. You can see all the dust that's coming out of this. Like, so there's dust everywhere. That'll be, like I said, our dandruff and stuff, I'm sure, our skin sloughing off, all of those things that happen. So there'll be bacteria in here. I know there will be. So I'm going to give this bin a name, and I'm going to call it Hoover because this is from our vacuum. So maybe I won't put the worms directly on it, but I will put them very close to it. So I'll put some of this juicy cardboard because I gave them, well, it's really going to be hard to separate the worms from the cardboard here. Well, maybe I'll put the non-worm side of the cardboard down and see if they find. Now that is very dry, but this bedding right here was kind of wet. So they'll get into it in their own time. This bin does not have any drainage in it. It's just a Rubbermaid tote. So I've tried this several times with other hairy things, everything from our haircuts to the dog hair to coconut coir or hemp hanging basket fibers, and I don't feel the need to water them. The worms just make their way into them. The worms in here are they're very healthy. That's, you know, they are lively and healthy and just doing great. So so I'm just gonna let this Hoover bin take over and just see whether the worms get into it. I'm going to put the bubble wrap instead of on top of the cardboard or the brown paper bag. I'm going to put it underneath to keep and put it right down this end. Hopefully that'll get some moisture building up as the humidity just spreads there into the end with the vacuum contents. And if this works, if the worms get into it, I'll check in a few days. If the worms start getting into those vacuum fibers and they start disappearing, we have a whole bunch more because our canister contained months worth of vacuuming, and it's quite a volume. So I intend to then harvest the rest of this bin, move it into the adjacent bin that is also maturing bedding, and put the rest of the vacuum contents in here, well, along with some of the old bedding, and have an entire bin devoted to vacuum contents because it will take up a good portion of this bin. So anyway, that's introducing you to Hoover, a new bin for me. All right, everyone, take care. See you in the next video.